Welcome to the She Said Privacy, He Said Security podcast. Like any good marriage, we will debate, evaluate, and sometimes quarrel about how privacy and security impact business in the 21st century.
Hi, I'm Jodi Daniels, and I'm a certified informational privacy professional, and I provide practical advice to overwhelmed companies.
Hi, Justin Daniels here. I'm a cybersecurity subject matter expert and business attorney. I'm the cyber quarterback helping clients design and implement cyber plans. I also help them manage and recover from the inevitable data breach. I also provide cyber business consulting services to companies as well. We have John Corcoran here today, and we have flipped the script, and he'll be interviewing us.
All right, you guys, I'm excited to dive into this topic here with you guys because we got an interesting topic here today. So there's two really monumental documentaries that have come out recently, The Social Dilemma and The Great Hack. And they both have a lot to say about privacy and security issues. And you two are privacy and security experts. And so we're going to dive into some of the different issues that are raised from those two documentaries. But first, before we get into that, this episode is brought to you by Red Clover Advisors, which helps companies to comply with data privacy laws and establish customer trust so they can grow and nurture integrity. Red Clover works with companies in a variety of fields, including technology, SaaS, e-commerce, media agencies, professional services, and financial services. In short, they use data privacy to transform the way companies do business. Together, we're creating a future where there is greater trust between companies and consumers. To learn more, go to redcloveradvisors.com, or you can also email info@redcloveradvisors.com. All right, Justin, I'm going to start with you. Two monumental movies that have come out, The Great Hack and The Social Dilemma. First of all, why are they making so much of a stir today?
I think they're making such a stir today because they really lay bare the business model of big tech. And there's a reason why Google, Facebook, among others, are the richest companies in human history. And it's for one reason only. And in a word, it's data. And I think what both documentaries make so clear is people don't truly understand what is being done with their data. They're just having fun on Facebook, being part of the community, and don't understand how, without their real knowledge or consent, how all that data can be used and monetized on an unprecedented scale that has some really significant societal impact.
Jodi, I'm going to turn to you. So The Great Hack is about Cambridge Analytica. For those who don't recall, tell us about what that company did.
Yeah, so Cambridge Analytica, it was a data company essentially, and it helped other organizations use data in digital campaigns. But where the data came from is kind of the question at hand. And specifically, Cambridge Analytica really helped political campaigns and political messages around the world. So not just here in the United States.
And you're both parents. What do these movies say to us as parents? Or another way of putting that is, what should parents be thinking about these big tech companies right now? What should they be aware of?
Yeah, so I'm going to start with this one. So, as parents to people who are, once you give a device, these kids and adults are addicted, and they're addicted for a reason. And it's because the device and the software is literally designed to keep us hooked. There is no end on Facebook. There's no end on any of the social media platforms. You can just keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling literally forever, like infinity. And so then you have to wonder, well, what am I scrolling and what am I seeing? And the content that I'm going to get is going to be different than the content he's going to get. And it's going to be different than what you're going to get. And then the question is, well, what content am I getting? And how different is it? And these companies are utilizing data, as Justin just described. They are data companies to customize that experience. But then you have all the ads. And so what type of ad message is also coming in, from whom? And we're all just kind of commoditized people here that my little screen and my little space, someone's going to buy the opportunity to deliver what their message is to me. Whether or not that message is accurate, real, we have no idea. So there's a lot, but that's kind of my starting point. I know you have some thoughts.
Justin, your thoughts on what parents should be paying attention to?
I think the most poignant part of the entire documentary of Social Dilemma, it was one scene. So, all of us on the podcast and everyone listening, we've all been in a relationship that ended badly and it upset us. Someone broke up with us and, that stinks. So if you recall on social media, they have an algorithm. So if you haven't been on, Facebook, they want to get you to come back. And so haven't you ever gotten a picture of, hey, this is what John was doing a year ago or 5 years ago, and there's a picture, and it's usually something, oh, that's a nice memory, and so you look, and maybe you stay. But now, what if it's a picture of you with an ex-boyfriend or girlfriend that you were struggling to get over, and you're finally over them, and now you see that picture? The algorithm is just, it's just numbers. It doesn't think about the emotional impact of someone who had a tough breakup and now they have to see a picture of their ex-boyfriend or girlfriend and how that might affect them emotionally. And so when you see all these statistics about increase in teen suicide and all some of these bad societal consequences, it's because you have this algorithm that doesn't think about people's emotions. They just want you to get back looking at Facebook, whether it's something that's going to make you happy or sad is irrelevant. But to us as parents, that my daughter or son may go out on social media and see something that makes them really upset to the point they're not talking to me, or, how some people can react to things. That's a really big issue in my mind.
Yeah. So as a parent, what can parents do? What's the answer for them? Is it no digital devices? Or is there, maybe software that can help with this sort of thing? Or is it regulating which apps they're on or the number of hours that they're on these apps?
I think you should tell him the story about our daughter and TikTok.
Oh, yeah. So I think I'll tell you the story of TikTok. I think first it's also a combination of everything that you've just described. And another part to the social dilemma that they're emphasizing and the addictive nature of it is the likes and the comments. And so people are all about, oh, I have to go on because did you like my photo? And it's literally psychologically driven that we want to keep going to figure out how many likes and comments and shares do we get. So then people are measuring, oh, well, that picture only got 3 likes. That wasn't a great picture. I need to go and do something different to me, which is also highlighted in the social dilemma, so that it gets more likes. And then when the girl makes the change, the picture is better received. So then she internalizes, oh, I have to look this certain way. And that also starts to get to some of the issues of the teen suicide and depression and anxiety, because people are now no longer able to think for themselves. We're just dependent on how many likes and comments. So I think it also depends on the age of the child. The younger the child, so literally our 10-year-old thought TikTok should be fine. And we don't agree that TikTok should be fine. We think there's a lot of security and privacy challenges on TikTok. And so we've just banned. There is no TikTok here. At the same time, you might have some older teens that banning TikTok might be quite a challenge. They might be independent enough to be able to put it on their phone. So I think it's education and really explaining what is TikTok? What is the Facebook doing? What is Instagram? What are any of these social platforms doing? And teaching people to limit, teaching people to know how to have their own value outside of the social media world. Because if you just take it away, it doesn't actually teach the lesson. And we have to still work with technology. And this is today's issue. Tomorrow, it might be a different issue. So we need to be able to teach to that. And there are definitely devices. You can talk about the VPN and things that you've put on ours for some of the kids kind of in between to be able to limit what they do.
Yeah. Our daughter's iPad, that's called Custodio. So we know where she's going and what she's doing. But the challenge we have as parents is think about parenting nowadays. Now you have to spend extra time uploading the software, monitoring the use of the devices. And we talked about this in another podcast we did, was what happens when they go to somebody else's house and they have different rules? It's kind of like what TVs were, but now on steroids. So in other words, it's really it takes a village. So it takes parents being on the same page about the devices and whatnot. And I think Jodi's example of TikTok is one where I still think you have a lot of unawareness of these apps and what some of them mean, because our daughter's like, well, all these other kids are doing it. And it may be because their parents aren't as well attuned to these issues as Jodi and I might be, because we're immersed in it.
Certainly, yeah. And you mentioned, Jodi, a moment ago, TikTok has a number of privacy and security issues. So this question goes to either of you, but what are some of those issues that people should be aware of?
Oh, I like to joke that, do you really want the Ministry of State Security spying on you?
That's
I mean, it's a Chinese-owned company with a U.S. arm, but numerous times it would say it was doing one thing and it would do something else, and it would extract way more information than one, it disclosed, and two, it needed as well. So you think you're just putting a dance on and you've downloaded the app to your phone, and instead the app's actually taking a lot of other information that it doesn't need for you to have a dance on the app. So and then it's owned by the Chinese government. So you don't own and have any control over that data. To name a few.
Let me ask, it seems like, as also users of digital devices, there has to be a degree of mixed emotions towards some of these technologies. In some ways, there are advantages. People always point to, like, Facebook reconnects you with maybe someone you went to high school with who you haven't been in touch with in a while. How do you feel about that? And where's the line between some good that comes from these different, platforms and where, crosses over the line and the bad parts outweigh the benefits to it?
So Justin always jokes that I'm a prolific Facebook user. So I use Facebook. I firmly believe in what you just described. I've reconnected with many people that I would never have been able to keep in touch with. And I like it for those reasons. I find a lot of value in the groups. I'm in a number of different business groups and personal groups and local groups. And I find a lot of information there. I also, restrict and know kind of who I'm sharing the data with. You can have different friends lists and share. And I'm aware of what's happening. I understand the different advertising that I get. If I click on one shoe ad, I get 20 shoe ads for the next 3 days. I kind of understand that. At the same time, if it's kind of about minimizing and understanding what's happening. And I'm not looking for the validation from everyone else. And I'm aware that my news feed is slanted. I get that I'm only seeing certain types of articles and certain content on my feed. And if I want to get more information, I'm going to have to work harder to go and find it. So I certainly think that there's value, but like many other things, if it's a seesaw and, this is so wonderful, it's not perfection at all. And there you go. You have to balance it out, and it's not just in one direction. So do I like that they sell and use my data in that capacity? Absolutely not. So I'm careful about what I put and communicate and those types of things.
Yeah. And Justin,
I also live life and want to be able to connect with people. So it's about being educated and balanced in mind.
Right. Justin, your thoughts on that?
So this is where we're going to have some fun. So my view of Facebook is, how do you define a friend? I define a friend as somebody I can call at 2 a.m. and they'll come and help me. Facebook friends are not, for the most part, your true friends. But where I really think differently is, in my personal opinion, social media has, in the last 10 years, been weaponized to divide us. And I feel that the big technology company, with the way their business model is, they have zero incentive to police themselves, to really start to have some profound conversations about the type of things that should be put on social media or should not be. And I recognize, as an attorney, we have First Amendment issues. But I'd also like to point out that you're not hearing a whole lot of information about foreign interference in our elections, because the media companies kind of banded together. the US Cyber Command took some offensive actions against known actors to kind of preemptively hamper their capabilities. And so when I see things like that, I think that there are opportunities to start to come up with ground rules. And I passionately have come to the belief that Section 230 of the Telecom Act of 1996, which basically insulates a platform for liability for the content on it, either has to be eliminated or we have to find a better way, because the current state of affairs, in my view, cannot continue, because I can't tell you how many people I talk to who, when you go behind what they're telling you, they got it off of Facebook. And I'm like, well, how do you know that's true? And they're like, well, it was on my social media feed. I'm like, well, it might as well, that's not really any way to verify it. That's my biggest concern. And that to me is one of the biggest negative consequences of Facebook that I'm very concerned about for us as a society.
So as you look at the social media landscape, and there's a lot of different players out there. We've mentioned Facebook, Instagram, which is owned by Facebook. There's LinkedIn, there's Pinterest. If we have a legislative solution like that, will that solve it? Will that make these platforms more palatable? Or, are we beyond that point? Is it impossible? Do you think it would be impossible for these social media platforms to exist in a more heavily regulated world?
Sure. So I've had this discussion, so I'm going to throw something out for you or in the audience's consideration. So when television came along in the 50s, you have the FCC that regulates what you can watch on television. Like you remember in the Super Bowl when Janet Jackson had her wardrobe malfunction?
Yes.
There's certain words that you can't say on television.
Right.
More importantly, there's certain rules about what you cannot sell to children who are watching cartoons on television.
Like cigarettes.
Magically, when you took the cartoons and stick them on YouTube, you don't have those regulations anymore. And so, John, I'm not naive enough to think that this is some simple solution. It certainly isn't. But to me, it's no different than what happened in 2008 when you took away all the regulations and you basically had unfettered capitalism, and you saw what happened. By the same token, there can be common sense regulation around, prohibiting things that are patently false from being posted on social media, and having some level of responsibility of companies that if they don't police it, they can be held accountable for that, because there's precedent for other types of technology that we've used. Because I think the current situation is one that is untenable and will continue to divide our society, which I think inevitably is going to make this a national issue. It's just how quickly can we start to build the awareness to where people say, enough, we've got to deal with this, or else we're putting our children and our children's children at serious risk.
It's interesting because maybe an analogy would be like the music download industry, which there was a period in time, the Napster era in the late 90s, when it was almost unfettered, and it was the Wild West, and people are downloading music like crazy. And then the pendulum kind of swang back the other way, and then it actually became a very productive industry, and in many ways, the music industry transformed itself. So turning to you, Jodi. So what are your thoughts on that? All the different social media platforms out there. Is there a legislative solution out there that would make it a more palatable solution for everyone?
I think the Wild Wild West doesn't work. We're seeing what's happened now, right? All the amount of data that was shared to Cambridge Analytica, quite honestly, was quite a privacy story, to the tune that the privacy office came with their big coats, and the privacy professionals were like, look, they have big fancy privacy coats. So it was a very big news story, and legislation won't cure it. It is a first step. And if you tie together really what the social dilemma highlights, which is the curated newsfeed and the algorithm. So I can maybe police the news and make sure that it's quote unquote whatever we believe is accurate. But that doesn't necessarily change how people are being encouraged to be on a platform, and the algorithm is continuing to serve me a certain slice of the content. So the division in the US, as an example that Justin was mentioning, if everything I see is really in one slice of the pie, it actually might be all accurate, which you wouldn't need the legislation for that part. But if it's all accurate, it's still one slice of the pie. And then if you have someone who's paid because that's how they make money to serve ads, and I'm going to get a further message, the current design is going to continue to foster that singular message. And I'm encouraged to spend hours on it. So the algorithm, the companies need to kind of gain some data ethics underneath any type of legislation that happens as well. You have to have all the different pieces collectively combined, or it won't work.
And John, I think I've got a really good analogy that kind of brings this into focus. So let me ask you a question. How often nowadays when you get in your car or you're a passenger, do you not use your seatbelt?
For me, never. Always put on my seatbelt. Yeah.
Right. So let's go back, wind the clock back to the 1960s. They didn't have seatbelts. This guy came along, Ralph Nader. We may remember him. He was like, we should have seatbelts in cars for safety because people get killed in cars. So the auto industry fought it. Well, we finally got seatbelts. But you know what? Even through the 90s, people weren't wearing seatbelts. So in comes Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And they start to change the perception of why you should or shouldn't, you need to buckle up. We're against, drunk driving. And then that led to the start of some legislation where in most states now, if you don't have your seatbelt on, you can get fined. But, they'd have to pull you over and whatnot. But it was the combination of activism about, hey, this isn't right. And here's why people's lives are at risk, plus legislation that got us to a much better place. Now, we haven't gotten rid of car accidents, but we've sure gotten adoption of seatbelts to just skyrocket to where it's a normal thing for my kids. They don't even bat an eyelash. We just put on our seatbelt. When I was growing up, my dad really wasn't that way. And I just point that out because if you do these kinds of things, if we could do it for seatbelts in a generation, why don't we have the political will to do it for something like this that is just as pervasive as the seatbelt?
Yeah, it's an interesting analogy. Any final thoughts before we wrap things up on this topic or issues that we haven't discussed that particular parents should be aware of?
I think parents need to be active. They can't just assume that their kids are fine. They need to know who they're connected to, what platforms are they on, making sure that they have the right tools to be able to monitor and prevent. Kind of a local shout out to a company here called Bark, which can help monitor what's happening for children's accounts. So taking an active role, I think, is going to be the most important part.
Maisel, no shout out for Bark? Okay. I guess my final thought is I think the key takeaway from today's podcast is, what kind of society do we want to be going forward? How do we want to think more reflectively about how we want to engage with social media? Because I look out right now and, as Jodi and I sit here today, we're in Atlanta, Georgia. So the epicenter of the United States politically sits in our state for the next 2 months. And we're going to be inundated with all kinds of ads and other things that if you fact check them, many of them are just going to be outright false. And a lot of this will be driven on social media. And to me, when I'm about to go through this whole period, it's just, there's got to be a better way. And all of us need to come together because all of this divisiveness is just corroding us as a country. And if you've been out of the United States, we really have it good here. And we should be doing all we can to preserve this wonderful resource we have called democracy in the United States.
Absolutely. Well, Red Clover Advisors, redcloveradvisors.com, anywhere else people should go to learn more about you, Jodi, and the work that you do?
Social media, ironically, for our discussion.
I thought you were going to say Lululemon for all of the ads you get.
Go straight. Find us on TikTok and...
Not on TikTok.
Or Facebook.
Facebook. Or LinkedIn. Responsible users only. I feel like that should be a...
There you go. Justin, Jodi.
Put on a beer can. Responsible users only.
Very good. All right. Thanks, you guys.
Thanks for listening to the She Said Privacy, He Said Security podcast. If you haven't already, be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes and check us out on LinkedIn. See you next time.